Right, we're going to leave behind Northern Europe for a bit and look at Spain with the image here on the left-hand side. Spain is a dominant world power at the end of the 16th century with European, Mediterranean, and New World exploration. This is the time of Christopher Columbus, of Balboa, and of Magellan. And the Spain supports the Catholic Church against the Protestant Reformation. They stay, for the most part, staunchly Catholic as a country. And I think you can probably see that when you look at the image here on the left-hand side. We are about back to these large-scale, Protestants would say, idolatrous images of holy figures. The artist here is named El Greco. This is called The Burial of Count Orgaz. It's found in the church of Santo Tome in Toledo, Spain, in the year is 1586. The subject matter comes from a legend that deals with the Count Orgaz here, who's being lowered into his grave. He was a benefactor of the church at San Tome, and he had died in the 1300s. So this is, a couple centuries old by now. He is buried in the church by St. Stephen and St. Augustine that you see here, and they make a bodily descent from heaven. So they're really there, bodily descent from heaven to lower the Count into his grave. And then up above, the angels carries the soul of the Count to heaven. So here's the Count, and here's the Count's soul. And he is accompanied here by his intercessors, the Virgin Mary, and of course, Peter. We can zoom in here. Peter has the keys of the kingdom here. And then there's our Virgin Mary and all kinds of saints and angels that accompany this moment. What's interesting to note about this work is that El Greco combined two styles. The first is Venetian, and that's why I have this image up here on the right-hand side. And then the second is Mannerist. So we're going to have to move this slide here on the right to look at a few more works there on the right-hand side. Let's first talk about Venetian. What does he take from the Venetian tradition? The first one is an intense light, and I think you can see that here behind Christ. The sort of light and dark that's there is very similar to what you have with our Venetian tradition, with the work of Titian that's here on the right-hand side with that Assumption of the Virgin. The other Venetian trait that El Greco takes is the bold color. We can see that between the two, that red and yellow together. And then also a great use of oil paint, really pushing the limits from opaque to translucent, all kinds of great detail in the robes here, even in the images, the small little vignettes, images that point out towards the viewer here. So that great use of oil paint, he also learned from that Venetian tradition. But some of these traits that you see on the left-hand side are also part of the Mannerist tradition. So I'm going to remind you of Mannerism to see if there's some traits that we can see that El Greco had taken. The first thing are these elongated bodies. I remind you of the Madonna of the Long Net by Parmigianino. This Mannerist work shows us these sort of very long proportions, everything sort of stretched out. And we certainly get that here too, especially here in the heavenly realm. And what's interesting to note is that the figures in the heavenly realm are more elongated than the figures in the earthly realm. And this is the artist's way of creating a purposeful separation between the two realms, making these figures above even more removed from that earthly realm by making them appear different and elongated, sort of stretching out those bodies. And you can certainly see that here, the long arm of Christ that's there as well. The next thing is undefined space. Difficult to sort of see where space is in this image. And we know that is a Mannerist trait. Jarring color as well. And I think if we look at this image here, we get the same thing, the elongated bodies, indiscriminate sort of space, sort of floating around in a space that we're not really sort of privy to or quite understanding. And then again, that sort of jarring color we saw here with the sort of green and red, and we sort of have the red and yellowish here as well. So what El Greco does is he takes from two traditions, the Venetian and the Mannerist, to make a work that is sort of uniquely Spain in the 16th century. Spain is known to be very Catholic, producing works that are very emotional, They were really stark proponents of the Counter Reformation, of making sure that the church sort of returns to its prominence. So it makes sense that they're trying to sort of elicit this sort of strong image, this heavenly realm. And so they pull on two traditions in the past that are very sort of dramatic, that being the Venetian and the Mannerist traits.